Everyone, it's 6 o'clock, and so we're going to go ahead and get started. Before we get started with tonight's content and introduction, I would like to invite our interpreter to let everyone on the call know that we have translation services, interpretation services. So just to inform everybody, welcome. We're here tonight for the first virtual engagement with our special education families regarding the reopening of NVUSD schools for 2021. Marcy, can you please translate and direct everyone to how they can access interpretation in Spanish, please?
Por supuesto, doctora. Buenas noches a todos, bienvenidas a las familias de educación especial. Estamos ofreciendo servicios de interpretación simultánea esta noche por medio de la aplicación Zoom. Pueden presionar el botón con el globo y seleccionar el lenguaje español para escuchar la interpretación simultánea durante la presentación. Si tienen algún comentario público, también lo podrán hacer en español y este será traducido al inglés.
Gracias, Marcy.
De nada.
Okay, so we'll have interpretation services turned on. All right, so welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Rossana Musetti. Again, I serve as your superintendent of schools here at the Napa Valley Unified School District. Very excited to continue our community engagement
Napa Valley, estamos muy entusiasmados de continuar
of reopening NVUSD schools during the COVID-19 pandemic. I have very little to do tonight because we have our two experts in the instructional division. I'm joined tonight, the meeting will be facilitated and led by our Assistant Superintendent, Pat Andrew Jennings, who leads the Instructional Services Division, alongside our organizational expert around everything special education, which is our Director of Special Education, Ms. Terry Lynn Rossetti. So with that, I'm gonna hand it off to Pat and Terry. Thank you for being here tonight and leading this really important work around engaging our special education families around the reopening of school.
Good evening, everyone, and so glad that you can join us tonight. It looks like we are nearing 200 participants, so that's very exciting to be able to talk directly with you and at the end take some of your questions. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me just give me a sec. Actually, before I do that, give me a minute. Thank you guys for your patience. Okay, so welcome again. So thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I am so pleased to have Terry Lynn Rossetti here, the Executive Director of Secondary, to answer some questions and to hopefully help our families transition and get ready for the start of the 2020-21 school year. So some of our topics for tonight would be, we're going to do a quick overview of the start of the school year. We're going to look at the two program models and the schedules for those two models. I just wanted to let you know that if you, we're doing an abbreviated version tonight. If you want more detail, please check out the board presentation from July 16th. There's much more information as well as on the district's website for the reopening of schools. There's a huge list of frequently asked questions and lots of information that will help families as they plan for the start of this very unusual school year. We also plan to address some questions within this hour based on some of the questions that emerged from the feedback we got from families that submitted questions. And then also Terry Lynn will also talk about some accommodations and modifications for our families with children who have some special needs. So we're going to jump right in, and we have some special guests, and I'm going to pass it off to Terry Lynn, and she's going to share with you a little bit about who our special guests are for this evening. Terry Lynn?
I was muted, I apologize. Thank you very much for the introduction. Joining us tonight, we have our Executive Director of Parents Can. Parents Can is our local family resource center. And I would like to introduce Marlena Garcia. And Manny, if you could, Mr. Ruiz, if you could allow her to speak, I'd like for her to have the opportunity to share a little bit about what Parents Can offer for families.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Rossetti, I've unmuted her mic, so she's able to speak.
Hello, good evening. Sorry, my kids are in the meeting with me. Good evening, my name is Marlena Garcia. I'm the Executive Director of Parents Can. For those of you who don't know Parents Can, we are your local family resource center. We are dedicated to serving families of children with special needs across the whole county. We're here to guide and help parents as all of these challenges arise, and boy, do we know that there are a lot of challenges arising this year. We are here to support you in any questions that you might have, and here to also partner with our special education department to try to figure this out together. So hopefully, if you don't know us, that you can look us up on our website. We have lots of different support groups and different topics that we could help you with. So thank you for having me, and I'm interested in hearing the questions as well that parents might have to further our services as well for families. So thank you, Terry Lynn and Dr. Massetti and everybody else.
Thank you, Marlena. Also joining us tonight is our chairperson of our Napa County SELPA Community Advisory Committee. Her name is Samantha Coburn. And Mr. Ruiz, if you could allow her the opportunity to introduce herself and share a little bit more about the Community Advisory Committee.
Is Ms. Rossetti? I'm not able to find her on the list. What?
She was logged in under Alyssa.
A-L-I-S-S-A?
I think so. A-L-Y-S-S-A.
Yeah, I don't see her, Alyssa. A-L-Y-S-S-A. I'm not seeing her on the list. Would it be under another name?
It was not. I had checked her on the list earlier before we're started, but I can share a little bit about the Community Advisory Committee, and if we find Ms. Coburn as we move forward, we will come back to that if that's all right. So our Napa County SELPA organizes our Community Advisory Committee. It is a parent-run group that advises the district staff throughout the county. We are one of the districts that participates, and the Community Advisory Committee meets about every other month. Our next meeting will be August 24th at 6 p.m. And we will be sharing more information about that meeting as it gets closer.
Thank you so much, Terry Lynn. So let's go ahead and get started on the rest of our presentation. So one of the things that Dr. Massetti presented to the Board of Education on July 16th was regarding our phased-in approach for the start of the school year. So phase 1 is online learning, and that would be whether you choose online to in-person learning or whether you chose the virtual learning academy. Both of those in phase 1, which is how we're going to start the year, would be online. If as the public health conditions allow, we would move into phase 2, where students would be in person for 2 to 3 days a week in an AM/PM hybrid model, which I'll talk a little bit about later on on the next slide. And then in phase 3, they would be in person 5 days a week, AM and either in the morning or in the afternoon. And then phase 4 would be all in person. We're back to our regular school full day life. So we are all eager and hopeful that we will get there. Terry Lynn, was there anything else I needed to add to this?
One of the things I wanted to make sure that parents were thinking about as they were choosing between the in-person learning option and the virtual learning academy was the difference in that families choosing the virtual learning academy are indicating that they are not comfortable coming to school sites during the pandemic conditions. And that includes for services for special education.
And so that's nice segue into our next slide, which are the two program options that families were asked to submit what they wanted to do by Wednesday, the July 29th. Option one is the online to in-person learning option. That's for families who would plan to come back when public health conditions allow. And then option two is the virtual learning academy. What you're saying is that you would choose that your child will be in virtual learning for at least the first semester, and depending on public health conditions, possibly longer. With either one of these options, as Terry Lynn, Director Rossetti mentioned, that the virtual learning academy option services that your child would normally receive in person, if you select that, would be they would be receiving those services virtually. The online to in-person and virtual learning academy have similar schedules, whether it is elementary or secondary. Whether you're online to in-person or virtual learning, you will either be in a morning cohort or in an afternoon cohort. So if you're in the morning cohort, and these times are approximate. We're still working on the schedules with our teachers union. If you are in the morning, it would be approximately 8 to 10:30. It'll be about 2.5 hours. If you are in the afternoon cohort, it would be 12:30 to 3 approximately. And that would allow time in the middle of the day for cleaning and teacher meetings and teacher lunchtime. Like I said, these times are approximate and a pending review from the Napa Valley Educators Association. The AM cohort, some people had questions about 2.5 hours is a long time for a student to sit in front of a computer screen. The expectation is that a child would not sit in front of the screen for 2.5 hours, but that's the time that the teacher would be available. They would lead some direct lessons. This child might go off and work a little bit independently and then come back, and the teacher would be there to assist them in the next activity or the next learning. There might be small group where a teacher might have do a direct lesson and then work with a small group while other students are working independently at home. But it wouldn't be 2.5 hours of screen time during that 8 to 10:30 time. Anything else you want to add, Director Rossetti?
Not to those.
Okay. So for this, this is the online to in-person, and it's actually would be the same, very similar to the virtual learning academy. This is for secondary students. Secondary students are the middle school and high school students, and what they would have is they'd have 3 periods a day. So in the morning, they would have a period 1 might be about 45 minutes. They'd have a little break and then go into period, we have period 3. It could be they'd have period 1, 3, and 5 on one day, and then periods 2, 4, and 6 on another day. And they would be in school in the morning for all of those days, or in the afternoon for 5 days a week. And this again allows time for teacher work time in the middle of the day, as well as a teacher lunch. So while the class is in session, like if you're in the morning, you are part of the AM cohort. While you're in school and you're interacting and engaging with your teacher, there would be a group, the afternoon group, that would be having asynchronous time. That means they would be working independently of the students, of the teacher. So the synchronous time, if you're in the AM cohort, would be in the morning. The asynchronous time would be in the afternoon. If you are having time with your teacher in the afternoon, the time that you would be working independently would be in the morning. Anything you want to add, Director Rossetti?
No, thank you.
Okay. And we'll have time for questions at the end. So I want to let you know that if people have questions as they come up, we will do that toward the end. And Director Rossetti is going to talk a little bit about some of the accommodations and modifications for our students with special needs.
So we've had lots of questions regarding what kinds of accommodations and modifications we can make for students who have IEPs. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the most frequently asked questions. First, I want to be clear that every accommodation and modification that we're making is individualized to the student. So unfortunately, a lot of my answers to specific questions might sound like it depends, because we want to be looking at your student's unique learning needs and addressing those accommodations and modifications within those. We did have a lot of questions about masks and whether or not students who have special education services would be required to wear masks. We will be following the public health guidelines, which talked about students in grades 3 and above being required to wear masks, and students in younger grades that was a recommendation. Now there is an exception for certain groups, and that's for students who have intellectual disabilities, who have health needs, and who have intensive sensory needs. And we will be addressing those accommodations with families of those students. There were also a lot of questions around curriculum, both in the general education programs and in our special day class settings. In the general education programs, we will be working with teachers to accommodate and modify all curriculum to meet the needs of our students on the individual basis. We have also adopted some new curriculum to help support students during this time period. One of those being IXL, which will support students in English language arts and math. Another being Unique Learning Systems, which offers a really well-rounded curriculum for our students in our self-contained functional skills classes. We've had many questions about whether or not we'll be able to bring students onto campus. So at this time, we're not able to bring in full classes of students because that would not be in alignment with public health guidelines. We will be able to bring students in for appointments with their teachers or service providers on an individual as needed basis. We will also be able to bring students in for assessment appointments moving forward once the school year begins. We've had many questions regarding students who receive intensive individual instruction, who work intensively with adults in a one-on-one setting. Those services will be continuing, as we are committed to continuing to provide special education supports to our students in this very unique situation. What those will look like will again be dependent on the needs of each individual student. But we're all coming back to offer our services to support our students, and we'll be here to help. Many parents have been emailing to ask if they can have IEP meetings, and as soon as the school year begins, we will be starting to hold our IEP meetings. They will continue to be virtual as they were last year. And we've been very thankful to our friends at Parents Can, who have helped many parents to really access that Zoom platform for our IEP meetings.
Thank you, thank you. So I know that this has been an incredibly challenging time for families, for all of our families, as you try to figure out how to best support your children. And so recognizing that and knowing that when we switched to distance learning in the spring, it was very quickly with not a lot of time and not necessarily a lot of support for families to help and assist their kids at home. And so this, the start of this school year, we are planning some family learning series that will take place the week of the first week of August 10th through 14th, and also during the first 3 days where teachers are doing teacher training. Dr. Rossetti, can you share a little bit about some of the specialized training that's going to be offered during that time for our families with children with special needs?
So as we start the family learning series, we're going to be really focused on helping families to log on to the new learning systems. And that might be helping families with log on to Clever, where we will be helping students with that single point of sign on. It will be more information about IXL or Unique Learning System, whichever your student is using. It will be on how to access for our IEP meetings. Those are our first round of of development for families during this time period. As we head into the semester, we'll be working with the CAC and Parents Can on specific interests for students, for parents of students with special education services. Sorry, that's a mouthful. To help support with more intensive family learning. So for example, we've had some questions about whether or not there would be any classes on behavior management in the home. We are looking at developing those, and we will be implementing those as the semester continues.
And I also want to add, there will be many other trainings that are for all of our families and parents, just on the different series, different programs that are used in our general education. So that I encourage you and welcome you to join some of those sessions as well. And more information will be coming out toward the end of next week regarding what those topics will be and how to sign up. They will be offered during the day and as well as some in the evening. Some of them will be synchronous, which will be, you'll engage live with a person. Some of them might be asynchronous. So you'll be modeling some of the learning that your children are going through, where you can watch some things on your own and learn, and then maybe jump into a synchronous session to ask questions. So there will be multiple opportunities for families to ask questions and to learn how to best support their kids in this really challenging time. I don't think this is anything that any of us want. This is not our preference. This is not what we want for our kids. But this is where we're at, and we are all, I know, doing our absolute best to do right by our children. One of the things that we've done, and sort of to make a little bit adjustment to the schedule, is that previously the first day of school was August 19th. We've moved that day back one day to August 20th. We had a professional learning day that was scheduled for teachers, the instructional staff, for October 9th. And instead, October 9th will be a regular student day, and August 19th will be the professional learning day. So it'll give us 3 days with teachers to work with them and get them to learn some of the new platforms we're using, some of the new tools, and to figure out some of the challenges that still remain as we implement virtual learning from day one. Anything else you want to add, Director Rossetti?
I just want to encourage families to keep in touch with us regarding their questions about family learning to make sure that we are meeting their needs as the semester continues.
Okay. And then lastly, I wanted to address some of the student and family needs that that we received feedback on from the our spring efforts in distance learning. As we enter into distance learning to start the year, some of the student and staff safety issues do come into play as we are opening our campuses for appointments. Going back to what Director Rossetti said regarding masks, they would be required for students who are 3rd grade and up, unless there's some other extenuating reason why that's not possible. We will also be doing symptom checks before people enter our campus. There will be one point of entry for that. If you were to go to some of our campuses now, you'll see that some campuses have already installed plexiglass where we are welcoming the public, and so that we make sure to keep our staff safe. And because we're not able to bring whole classes of kids back, but we are able to have one-on-one appointments when the school year starts, we will want to make sure that our staff and our students are safe while they're on our campus. Also, just as one of the big pieces of feedback from all of our families was around childcare and getting assistance and support with that. We have a strategy meeting tomorrow to continue to work with our partners at Napa County Office of Education, the Boys and Girls Club, to see what options are available and we can make available to our families. And then lastly, the technology access. Some families kind of made do in the spring with technology. Some came and picked up Chromebooks that were available. I think we distributed close to 4,000 Chromebooks over the span of a couple of weeks. It's pretty remarkable. Our technology department did an amazing job, but we want to make sure that all of our families have access to technology, and that they have a Chromebook, and if they have challenges with Wi-Fi, we do have hotspots available. And there will be a survey going out if you need to either get a Chromebook or a hotspot to support your child with their learning. Okay. And now it's time for questions. And I saw some hands up. So if you are wanting to ask a question, there is a, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There is a, you'll see a raised place where you can raise your hand to ask a question. We will be going through the questions and doing our absolute best to answer the questions that you have. So Mr. Ruiz, do we have, who do we have in our line?
So we'll start with Cabo Goddess. Go ahead and unmute your mic.
We're waiting. You have to unmute your mic. Cabo Goddess?
No.
Ms. Ruiz, yeah, let's go ahead and go to the next person, please.
Okay. Emily, let's see. Emily Major.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening.
Yes.
How are you tonight?
Great. So I had a couple of quick questions. So what about children with disabilities that cannot be supported appropriate via virtual learning, but are also medically fragile? Therefore, it's not a choice to not attend class, as in they've been advised medically to not go back in person. Will they be offered any one-on-one time with the staff on campus if they specifically, the virtual learning platform doesn't support their disabilities? And if so, will those children retain the staff that from the school that they've already formed a bond with?
I can answer that question.
Go ahead.
So we will be making appointments, and I would encourage you to contact either your coordinator or case manager to set up an IEP meeting so that we can discuss the particular needs of your student.
Okay.
But we will be seeing students one-on-one on campus by appointment, and we are doing everything we can to maintain consistency.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Who's next, Mr. Maurice? Lorena Munoz. You'll have to unmute your, oh, I'm sorry. Lorena?
Okay, yes.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening. Hi. I have a question. I have a daughter that is she's going into 5th grade now. And when last year when the school closed, she was in the middle of doing tests to see if she was like needed any special classes or special need. The last meeting I had via Zoom with the staff at her school, they said they were going to start doing the test, or they're going to renew again the test but once she goes back to school. But my question is, if I decided once she goes back to school, when she decided, when they go back to school, if they only have 2 hours, how are they going to do the test during those 2 hours? Will she be missing those from school? Or you guys are willing to have an extra time for her to do those tests instead of use the time for school?
I can answer that. So we will be making appointments with families in order to continue those assessments that we already began.
Okay.
So the team that was testing her will pick that up when school starts again on August 20th, and we'll be contacting you to make appointments to bring her in to continue those tests.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it'll be outside of her regular school time. Is that what I think the parent was asking? Like if she's in the morning, like you don't want to take up the morning time that she would have learning to have the assessment in.
Yeah, that was my main concern, that I don't want her to lose more time besides, now.
The assessment teams will do everything they can to work around her synchronous learning time.
Okay, all right. So then I have to wait until they contact me, right?
Yes, they will be contacting you once school begins on August 20th.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ruiz, do you want me to go ahead and do the next one?
Sorry, I unmuted Darcy, so she just needs to unmute her mic. There she goes.
Okay, thank you. I have one request of Superintendent Musetti and then a question regarding special ed. The first is that Dr. Relucio does a presentation at the Board of Supervisors meetings, and it's about return to school parameters. And I know a lot of parents have questions about safety and return to school parameters that are more based on what the county can do versus what the school has decisions with. And can we invite her to do a presentation for NVUSD parents to kind of give that information out? And oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And the second one is how the district will handle kids who are split between gen ed and special ed classes and split their day, how that will be handled in the decision making that parents have to decide what to do. How will parents know how that works for the kids that do a split?
Dr. Musetti, you want to answer?
Yeah, I can answer the first question. So yeah, the likelihood that we'd probably get Dr. Lucio to be able to do a presentation for NVUSD is probably unlikely. She does present to the Board of Supervisors because that's the kind of governing body that oversees the work of public health. Right now I know that the department, given the surge in COVID and everything that's going on, I know that their time is stretched really, really thin. And I really don't know what their capacity would be to be able to give presentations to other, specific sectors besides just sort of the guidance that they put in the written format, and then of course publicly present to their sort of governing body in their public space. So, it's something that may be able to happen down the road, but I would anticipate right now in the immediate future, it's probably unlikely, just given the demands on the department right now with everything that's going on.
Thank you.
And then to answer your second question, we will be looking at the schedules for each student individually because they're all a little bit different, but we'll make sure that students are spending their time receiving their services and also with their general education classes as well.
Thank you.
Are we ready for the next person?
Yes, we are. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Ruiz.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Sophie Bourgeau. Go ahead and unmute your mic. There you go.
I just have two questions actually, because my daughter is recently going to go to high school and we didn't get to have that meeting for transition, and she recently had surgery and we picked the online, and I was wondering after the second semester, do we have a choice to stay online or not, or do I need a letter from a doctor? And my second
I can answer that. You'll have a choice at the end of the first semester, and actually probably before the semester's over, we'll see what changes need to happen.
Okay. And also my second question is, how will we know that the parent, the family learning session, how would we receive it? Is it by email, or it will be just posted on the school district website?
It'll be sent through Parent Square as well as posted on the district website.
Okay.
And any other typical form of communication that we have with parents, it'll be sent out that way, and probably posted on individual school websites as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
So cute, baby. Okay, who's next,
Hey,
Mr. Ruiz?
Rocio Barajas. Wait, I'm sorry. Rocio put her hand down. Heather Yarborough.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. I had a couple questions. My son is going from kindergarten to first grade. And last year, we were in the middle of doing his testing. So he already qualified for speech therapy. And we finally received speech therapy about the last 2 days of school. So I'm hoping speech therapy will be something we get to go to school for as like an appointment time, because it was an utter fail online, as well as the online for the kids that are not interested in computers, technology, anything, constantly asking for help. I kept saying he's not interested. He has no interest in looking at a computer. He can't figure out how to write. I had to go out and buy different things to try and make it accessible for him, because the provided Chrome is not a touchscreen. So you have to figure out how to use the touchpad. So I had to go and purchase something to make that feasible. Finally, I was able to get papers that I could pick up. So that was helpful. So how is this supposed to translate to the kids that are not computer literate or have no interest in a computer at all? Are there options to get paperwork to take in to the, or to send into the teacher like we did last year? As well as the fact I kept asking for help with signing on, and I got tech support called me once and never returned the call after that. So it was a huge cluster last year.
I can hear the frustration. Yes, it sounds like it was
So,
incredibly frustrating last year.
On top of that, I'm a so I'm now learning that I have to figure out how to do all this stuff prior to him doing it. So is there going to be, with the family learning, is that a way for us to as well go online and get into these different sites? So that way we can say, okay, you're going in at 10 a.m. to this one, and at 1 o'clock you need to do this one. Like there'll be an actual schedule?
Yes, there will be
schedule.
More structure for distance learning this time. There also, because of the shift was so quick, and we really didn't have a time to like get like workbooks and things to families. This time there will be we are intentionally trying to limit the amount of screen time, especially for our K through 2 students, so that they will be issued, workbooks and things like that, so that they can work in, as well as whatever they engage with their teacher through the Chromebook. The thing is that with distance learning, the Chromebook is the classroom, so they have to, they're gonna, and they will get more savvy with it, but there will be training for parents to kind of understand sort of the different parts and pieces, which we weren't able to offer last time. And then also they will have some paper that they will, like things that they will work on that are hard copies. And then to answer there was one more question, I think, around the speech and language services. So Director, want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would add that we will, your speech therapist will be contacting you to talk about the options for setting up appointments to come in for services on it's all individualized. So for students though that we're challenged with accessing through the virtual learning, we will definitely be making appointments for those students to come in.
Great, because like I said, speech therapy was very difficult trying to do it online, forming the words and things like that. And he still has to finish doing the rest of the testing.
And we will be making appointments with you to bring him in to finish that assessment.
Thank you so much for version, because the last one wasn't so helpful to me particularly, but I'm sure to other parents it was.
Yeah. Hang in there. I know it's challenging, incredibly challenging. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Okay, Felicia Gaglioso.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. I have two questions related to the special day classes. The first one is that original, or the schedule that you guys have for phase 2 is to bring kids back only 2 days a week for Gen Ed, because we need to split those class sizes down to smaller groups. But the SDC classes already are smaller groups that usually max out at like 10 kids. So is the plan still to only have them in class 2 days a week? Or is there potential that because they're a small group already, they can go to school 5 days a week in phase 2, or whatever phase that is that we do the 2 days a week? And my second question is there a plan to reassess the county health situation in regards to the special day classes and the special ed kids who can potentially go back to school before all of the gen ed kids can attend school, because again, they are smaller groups and they do have more severe needs that cannot be met through virtual learning? I know in particular the Martinez School District is adopted that plan where they're going to reassess the situation, in 2 weeks after school starts, kind of a thing, to see if they can bring those kids back sooner.
I do know that one of the things that we've learned through all of this is that we have to remain adaptable and flexible and in all of our thinking and planning. And so, yes, as the public health conditions change, we've had to adjust plans. Part of what we recognize very clearly is that for our younger students and for some of our students with special needs, that in person is absolutely preferred. And so we will be doing what we can to ensure that as much as is possible to bring those students back first for as much time as is possible in terms of the safety conditions for our staff as well as for students. And we do rely pretty closely, or actually not pretty closely, but heavily on the direction from County Public Health to let us know what is possible and what is not possible.
And I would add to that, in addition, when we're looking at bringing students back into a classroom, we're not only looking at the number of students in the classroom, but also the number of adults in the classroom, because we want to make sure that we're able to provide for that social distancing for all people who are in the classroom.
Got it. Thank you.
I mean, and really our priority is around student safety and staff safety. And so as much as possible that we'll make sure to bring kids back as much as we can. We just keep hoping the counts keep going down. So it's not just the case count, but also the number of hospitalizations, the number of other factors that the health department's looking at. So that will really dictate what's possible for us in terms of bringing students back on campus in either small group of classes or what's possible.
And the only piece I would add around the public health component is that we will constantly be assessing. So shout out to my colleagues in Martinez, I think was a district that was named. We're very lucky in Napa County. We're a small county and we are the biggest district in the county. So we do get access to the public health official with more ease comparatively to other counties. And so as soon as we get off that watch list, that California watch list, and we're hitting that 14-day mark and all that's on the horizon, we will definitely consider in that phase 2 approach, what makes most sense as the preliminary phase to the full Monday through Friday model. And that may mean, opening up for special education students to get, acclimated prior to the masses coming in Monday through Friday, AM, PM. So it's not about assessing. For us, it will not be. Our strategy is not at this point we're going to assess and at this point we're going to assess. Our assessment is ongoing, and we just, again, happen to have access to the public health official probably in ways that much larger counties do not have access. So we'll be, you know, continue like on a daily basis assessing what the likelihood and when the statistical likelihood is that the public health conditions allow us to move into those in-person phases.
Thank you.
Okay, Veronica Gibson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you all for how hard you're all working. I know this is unprecedented. I have two questions. My first question is, and I think everyone felt this in the spring, really not a lot of the services were actually met. Basically, my son didn't get any services. I've received 2 emails from his case manager saying, basically, you can join this Zoom twice a week or something like that for an hour or so, which the link never ended up working. It was a whole cluster. So that didn't work out. And then I found out later, like in the last month, that there was actually services offered to other students that were in a specific Zoom for speech and all these other things. So I'm definitely worried with my son going from the transition of 5th grade to 6th grade and starting a new school that, one, he has not a transition IEP. I have no idea who his team is. I have no idea how these people get in contact with me, and have very little faith based on his past case manager. And all of his special ed packet and was sent to the wrong address. So I'm just kind of wondering how that's going to look.
Ms. Gibson, let me make the commitment that I will have Stephanie Solberg, who's the coordinator for secondary services, reach out to you this week to talk about the transition process. And I would, if there is a time period as we move forward where you feel like you are not getting communication from this case manager, please reach out to her or to me, and we will make sure that is happening.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And my second question was just basically how would he be receiving speech and OT? Yeah.
So we have been doing speech and occupational therapy services through teleservices, through Zoom. It is really dependent on the individual child. So some students actually, they did well through Zoom for their services. And some students we recognize very clearly it was a struggle for. So we want to make sure that we are bringing those students in, it was a struggle for individual appointments. And definitely if he is transitioning to a new team, we want to make sure that he has the opportunity to meet his new team, build that relationship, because that will increase his engagement.
Yeah, okay, that would be great. That's my biggest worry. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Rossetti, can you talk a little bit about the transition between elementary and middle to high, and what is the plan for that for students who are experiencing that?
So we are in the development of building a better plan for students to have those individual meetings with their new case manager, because we recognize that particularly for our students who have special education services, building that relationship is key to their engagement and success in participating with their services.
Ms. Ruiz?
Yeah, Christine Da Silva.
Thank you all for your time. I actually have a couple questions. So my first question is that, you know, my daughter does have an IEP in place. She does have a disorder that hinders her writing, and she's in 1st grade, and I have an incoming kinder. Right now, they're both in the same cohort because of their last names. So if 2 kids are in the same cohort at one time, how am I supposed to basically be there for both at once, number one? And number two, is there any way to modify her IEP so that maybe I have access to what the teacher is going to study the following day so that I can kind of practice with my child beforehand so she's prepared and feels prepared if I'm going to be teaching my son at the same time?
So Pat, do you want to talk about the cohort question and I can talk about the accommodations question?
Yes, the cohorts, I can understand like how that could be a challenge to have both kids on at the same time and both needing support. That 2.5 hours is not necessarily going to be all on like screen time, so that they might have some time where they're working independently on work that they can do independently. Also, if it's possible that if there is extenuating circumstances, that we may be able to make some adjustments to the cohort. But I think that if you have a child that has an IEP, the goal would be to have the services during a time that would support that.
And then I guess the other kind of going off of that, certain kids that do have IEPs or that are in the special education program, are they going to be put in priority for morning lessons since you guys have, some of the occupational therapy services and speech language pathology services in the afternoon? Like, how is that going to work?
So in looking at the schedules for the service providers, they will be looking at each cohort. So those services happen in the morning and in the afternoon.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm just trying to figure out if I have my child that has the IEP in the morning cohort, and then let's say, for example, you guys make an exception and my son's in the afternoon, then now we're running into how am I going to have the speech and the occupational therapy if it's during the afternoon cohort? Again, that's something that I'm going to have to sit in with my daughter.
We will work with you on individual schedules with your service providers to try to the maximum extent possible ease that scheduling.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tiffany Wing?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I have 2 kids with ADHD that take medication, and I'm not entirely clear on how to get them or request a morning session.
So we haven't made the determination, and I see like your last name is Wing, so you're thinking that you would automatically be in the afternoon. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we haven't made the AM. We haven't made the decision about who's going to be AM or PM yet. We're waiting to get the final enrollment numbers from the for tomorrow on Wednesday, and then that will help us determine sort of how we might split the morning and afternoon. Again, if there are extenuating circumstances, we will, but I imagine that we have a lot of families that might want mornings as opposed to afternoons, or some might want afternoons as opposed to mornings. So to the fullest extent possible, we will try to accommodate families, but because the system is so large and we have 17,000 students, it would be quite a challenge to do that for every child, and every family. But once you find out which one you're in, then I would say work with your site principal to see what flexibility there might be.
So that's my second piece to this. Our resource teacher left in the spring, and my son is going into 6th grade. So obviously we missed the whole transition IEP last year. So I have no idea who to contact for each of their sites.
So if the resource teacher left, I'm going to guess your site, and you have a new resource teacher. She's actually an experienced teacher within our district that will be there. So I will make sure to pass your name on to her. And as soon as she is back, she will contact you.
Okay.
And then I also will pass your name on to Stephanie Solberg, who is our coordinator for secondary, to contact you as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for everything that you're doing. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right, Amanda.
Just a few more questions, so go ahead.
Okay. Okay, Amanda Winchell. Go ahead, Amanda.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I feel like one of the biggest challenges for us last year was really obviously probably the same thing for every parent, is that's trying to juggle a full-time job, homeschooling, and childcare all at the same time. And with us homeschooling again this year, it's obviously it's going to continue to be a challenge because we're still working full-time and we still have to navigate this. I understand that it's difficult with 17,000 students to accommodate each personal, situation and such, but I do feel like the flexibility needs to be reciprocal. So do we have an option if because of work schedules, for example, if we needed to be in the PM, if we're assigned AM, do we have an option to request that and to change that? Hello?
I'm sorry, I think we lost Assistant Superintendent Andrew Jennings.
Is she frozen? Okay, I can jump in and help with that, Ms. Winchell. So, yeah, I think, like Ms. Pat Andrew Jennings stated, like obviously accommodating every individual situation would be difficult. However, we will be open to, looking at case-by-case requests and, different scenarios that will probably happen at the at the site level in partnership with the district. We have the task of seeing how the numbers fall, then balancing the morning and PM sessions, having to kind of maintain a level of balance for the rosters for our teachers. But with that being said, we understand flexibility is the name of the game. And so, flexibility with some parameters we are open to. So I don't want to make a large scale commitment that will, be able to make every change for every family, because then the system, it can't be managed in that way. But we will look at circumstances and try to be as flexible as possible. We understand that there's a lot of demands on our parents, and so we're mindful of that. So we appreciate your patience. Our first, our hesitation around specific commitments around those kinds of things is we're just really waiting. After Wednesday, we're going to have a much better sense of our planning with the numbers having come in from the enrollment options forms. And so as we get into the nitty-gritty planning post Wednesday, we'll be able to speak to those types of questions with a little bit more confidence once we have the data in our hands.
When would we also expect to receive like the workbooks and the schedule? I understand like after Wednesday you'll understand the schedule better, but what about like the actual, school schedule and workbooks?
Yep, great question. So distribution of supplies will be happening in August. So we know our target date for the first day of school is August 20th. Our directors for elementary and secondary are currently coordinating what would be like distribution dates for at all of the schools with our principals to be able to pick up supplies, materials, and then of course any necessary technology gaps that we need to close. So stay tuned. It'll be in August, before school starts.
Right, as much notice as we could get obviously to work with our employers because we do have commitments with them as well, I would be appreciated.
Okay, yeah, as a working parent, we totally understand and empathize. And then I've said this in the other engagement venues as well. We are working on a childcare strategy. Now, it's something that's in development since this has been kind of, forced upon the school district, and, we're not necessarily, our primary role is education. We do provide throughout a normal year, we do have some after school services and whatnot. We do partner with various organizations that help us with that. And we've heard loud and clear that one of the primary challenges with this is childcare. So we are trying to work with partners, explore childcare opportunities and partnerships. So stay tuned as that work unfolds as well, because we understand this is a tremendous burden for working parents.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want to take one more?
I think we could do one more.
Okay. Jerica? Go ahead, Jerica.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Hi. My question is, like the other mom before me, I'm a working mom, but I'm a field worker. So my day starts at 6 a.m. and I have to drop my son at the nanny's at 5:30 a.m. So childcare doesn't work for me because they don't open till 7:30. And he has a problem with behavior and focus. I cannot have him in front of a computer, and I also cannot ask my friend to be with him on the computer all day. So I don't know what to do because I'm not home till after 4 p.m. I work with him as much as I can, but what would happen if he's not on the computer? Like if he doesn't assist the online classes?
Let me see how it's moving. I don't see Andrew. I'll go ahead and dive in with that. So there is, that's a great question. So again, I want to appreciate Ms. Jerica, just the complex circumstances. You know, it's situation after situation. There's many situations like this where again, we understand there's a tremendous burden. So there is a requirement for attendance. And so there would be an attendance implication if the child doesn't attend. That's not so much the Napa Valley Unified School District being inflexible and insensitive to the challenging situations like the one you described. That's actually a requirement from the California Department of Education. So because the spring lacked robust synchronous time with the teacher, because all of the districts were responding to, you know, emergency, and it was really emergency distance learning. The California Department of Education has increased the accountability for all of the 1,100 school districts in the state of California. So we have to make sure that we're meeting instructional minutes requirements. We have to make sure that we're meeting those requirements via synchronous instruction with a teacher. We're grateful for that accountability. We welcome that accountability. It's important that our students have a lot of access time to the teacher. But with that, in order to manage the system, we have to make sure that that allocated time happens within the teacher workday, right? And so students, because school is mandatory and compensatory, students have to access the synchronous time at the time that the teacher's delivering. And that's how it's going to have to work in the in-person phased model and the virtual learning academy. You know, there's flexibility in arenas like independent study and whatnot, but these two options are considered pathways to replace the core instructional model that students experience during the day with all kinds of modifications. So if a child, for example, went several days without attending the synchronous time because of some of the challenges you've described, they would be considered absent. And in being absent, then there's a whole set of procedures and protocols. When students are absent and become truant, there's requirements that we have to enact and implement in response to that. So it is a challenge having to find the supports necessary so that students do access the teacher during the synchronous instructional time. It's essentially the classroom time. And we, again, we're not insensitive to the burden. So that's part of the reason I can't make any commitments or promises. I never like to, you know, put out empty promises. So I'm going to be very candid and honest about where we are. You know, we are trying to see, because of this overwhelming cry and concern from working parents based on the public health mandate, and now we have to do virtual learning, remote learning for everybody. And even there's still being a childcare issue when there's hybrid, we are going to explore to our best, you know, capacity possible if there is some sort of childcare options that we can weave together for our families, because we hear the need. So right now we don't have a solution. Right now, the honest answer is yes, your child will need to be present during the scheduled synchronous time.
Thank you. Sorry, my internet said I was done, so it decided it was done, so I cut out. So I'm back.
We have a lot of hands up, but our time is up. Assistant Superintendent Andrew Jennings, so I'm going to let you close it up.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I know that these are challenging times, and parents are faced with some really difficult choices around how to make it work for their children. We're here as much as we can be to support you and your child as you make those difficult choices. I know that there are still quite a few hands that were raised and probably many more questions. I know that Director Rossetti and her team, which will return shortly, will be more than happy to answer those questions, and feel free to seek them out. And we're here to support you and your children and make sure that the transition and the start of the new school year is as smooth as it can be in these very strange and unusual times as we start with distance learning part 2. Okay, thank you guys all so much.
Good
You guys have a
night.
good
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.